You're listening to the JD Rucker Show. Let's begin. Hello, my friends. Welcome to another episode of the JD Rucker Show. I apologize for being absent once again. For those who caught my show on Tuesday, you'll know that I had to cut it short because I just kept sneezing. It was the strangest thing, and then I started feeling under the weather. I was able to make it through individual clips. I washed my face, and then I was able to put together 2 or 3 segments a day for Wednesday and Thursday each, but I just couldn't put it together long enough. Moreover, and this is the important part, we have been doing our best to try to integrate appropriately with Rumble Studio. I use OBS to run the show, and Rumble Studio offers a similar service. The difference is, if you run your show through Rumble Studios, then you have the opportunity to make additional revenue. And we know that, as an independent journalist, being able to just do something slightly different, not change the show at all, not have to take on new sponsors, but to be able to make additional money as a result of using their software and their platform versus OBS, hey, it's worth a shot. So I've been trying to make it work. I will get there. Okay, there's a little bit of a learning curve, which I'm confident that I'll be able to overcome. I just haven't had the time to sit down and really dig into to try to make it work. So we're going to try to use their Premiere Video section for now. This still gets me credit because you have to accumulate enough time, enough hours using the studio in order for you to qualify for their potentially lucrative creators program. So that's what we're trying to do, which means that, unfortunately, at least to some of you, most of you won't care, but for the few of you who do like to hop in there and hop into chat, I am technically speaking right now, I am not live. I mean, I'm live to you, but we are pre-recording this, and I'm not watching the chat. We're pre-recording this with not much time to spare, to be clear. It's not like, I recorded this on Thursday or Friday morning or anything like that. No, it's dark outside. It's just, we're doing it. We're basically running the show the way that we used to, which is to record each individual segment and then just pop them in order. It's very similar to the way that I run the live show anyway. The only difference, literally the only difference, is that I won't be able to respond to chats the way that I have been when we run the show live. Now, Lord willing, we'll get this Rumble Studio figured out, and I will be able to start doing it live, real live, every day again. But until I get it mastered, I am a one-man show when it comes to producing and delivering the content itself. So I have to be very, very comfortable. I'm comfortable with OBS. I'm comfortable with the various programs. I'm just not quite comfortable with Rumble Studio yet. So I'll get there, maybe this weekend. Well, I'll have time to really play with it, dig into it, do some testing, and see can I upload my clips appropriately? Can I get the this little Chiron thing with you got the cross here, and you got the globes over there. Yeah, you get the idea. So if once we can get all of this stuff to work, then I'll go back to live, which I love doing because I love interacting with the people in the chat. But for now, for today's show, we're going to be doing it the old-fashioned way, which is to broadcast it live, but with mostly pre-recorded segments. With that said, and I appreciate your patience as we go through this. With that said, 3 things. Number 1, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. It really helps us out a lot. Number 2, if you're whether you're new to the channel or old to the channel, please press the like button or thumbs up button or whatever button there is for the platform that you're watching on. This helps us tremendously. And I guess in a way I almost get insulted. I don't want to say almost, because I do. I get my feelings hurt, okay? And I'm not an emotional guy. I don't generally get my feelings hurt, but it does bug me, we'll say. Maybe not my feelings. But it does bug me when I see these other shows that get like far fewer views, and yet they get a lot more thumbs up. Maybe they're just better at asking for it, or maybe their shows are just that much better. And that's not true, because I've watched some of these shows just to see, man, what is it, what are they doing that's so amazing? And then I'm watching the show and I'm like, nothing. They're just telling people to thumbs up all the time. Okay, well, maybe I need to start doing that, which I won't, because I always forget. I'm surprised I even remembered to do it this time. With that said, I'm asking you, my amazing and brilliant audience, to please don't make me remind you all the time. Just give us the thumbs up. It helps. It makes it to where information that I believe the world needs to hear, the information the world needs to view, that information is able to get out to at least more of them. Every thumbs up means I'm going to get, it's going to get featured to or shown to, I don't know, however many other people. So that is a good thing. All right. So what happened today? We had Kash Patel. He was sworn in by Pam Bondi. That's good stuff there, and he's hitting the ground running, according to this article over at The Gateway Pundit by Christina Layla. Kash Patel gets right to business, immediately shakes up FBI Washington field office. And for those who didn't see what he had said before, before he was being considered for the role of FBI director, well, I think he's been considered for a long time, but before it was publicly known, before he was appointed by President Trump, he went on, I forgot which podcast it was, but he went on some show and he basically said, look, if I was FBI director, I would basically close the office, close this huge FBI headquarters that they've got going. Congress paid hundreds of millions of dollars of your money to produce this building. We're going to get rid of it. We're at least going to kick a bunch of people out of it, because we don't need FBI bureaucrats. We need FBI crime stoppers. We need FBI investigators. We need FBI law enforcement agents. So we're going to take them and we're going to make it to where they're not sitting behind a desk, shooting TikTok videos and searching the social media profiles of January 6th protesters. Let's actually get them out there fighting the bad guys. So, according to the article, newly confirmed FBI Director Kash Patel immediately got to work on Friday and ordered 1,000 agents into the field. He also transported another 500 employees from D.C. to Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama. Kash Patel was sworn in as the 9th FBI Director on Friday. Today, well, unless you're on the East Coast, in which case it's yesterday. I promise you the following: there will be accountability in the FBI and outside of the FBI, and we will do it through rigorous constitutional oversight starting this weekend. The dude was sworn in Friday, and he started making changes Friday. Praise God for Kash Patel. He immediately shook up the Washington field office and transported, as we already mentioned. And then we already mentioned the 1,000 agents moving to the field, 500 employees moved. We're mentioning a lot of this stuff over and over again. There are around 7,300 employees working in the Hoover building, most of them non-agents, according to NBC News reporter Ken Delanian. Kash Patel also sent a letter to subordinates at the FBI prior to being sworn in as FBI director on Friday afternoon. He stated that among his top priorities is to rebuild the American people's trust in the FBI. And let's face it, nobody trusts them. I remember seeing some memes earlier today and even yesterday where they were showing Patriot Front, right? For those who don't know what Patriot Front is, consider yourself lucky. But for those who do know, I think a lot of us believe that Patriot Front is actually an FBI front, that at least some of the members, particularly the leaders of Patriot Front, aren't really out there trying to, well, they are really out there trying to spread hate, but they have different reasons for doing so. This is about narrative control. This is about trying to get people to hate the quote-unquote conservative right, even though I don't think there's anything truly conservative about Patriot Front. This is a neo-Nazi group, allegedly. This is a white supremacist group, allegedly. But a lot of us feel that just based upon them looking the way they look, acting the way they act, doing what they do, where they do it, sure seems like it's an FBI front. And hopefully, Lord willing, Kash Patel will tell us. And if he doesn't, if he doesn't say anything about Patriot Front, then maybe they're legit. And when I say legit, I mean maybe they really are just white supremacist, neo-Nazi haters that all like to wear khakis and weird shirts and masks and whatever. It feels like an FBI operation. It really does. And again, I'm not suggesting that they're all FBI agents. The FBI has demonstrated time and again that they're good at infiltrating and then leading and then coaxing and pushing people in certain directions. They can take people and, for example, they can take people and get them to devise a plot to kidnap a governor of Michigan or something like that. I'm just saying. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. Or then maybe they can get people to, I don't know, they can pretend to push people towards the Capitol building on January 6th, 2021. Just saying. Just saying. Just saying. All right. He stated that among his top priorities, blah, blah, blah. I'm honored to have been nominated and confirmed as your new director, he said in the letter. While I'm new to the Bureau's ranks, I've spent my career in government service and the past decade in national security, working shoulder to shoulder with the FBI and many of its partners throughout the law enforcement and intelligence communities. My commitment has always been and will always be to pursue justice and upholding the rule of law, and I look forward to continuing that commitment alongside all of you. Patel reportedly described keeping Americans safe as a no-fail mission. As I take on this new role, my priorities for our organization are twofold. First is to provide you with the tools and resources you need to keep our communities safe. This will include streamlining our operations at headquarters while bolstering the presence of field agents across the nation and collaborating even more closely with our essential partners in state and local law enforcement. Second is to ensure we rebuild the American people's trust in the FBI. We'll do that by committing ourselves to full transparency and the people's representatives in Congress and by upholding the highest standards in all that we do, ensuring rigorous obedience to the Constitution and a single standard of justice for all. Imagine a single-tier justice system. It doesn't matter what race you are, it doesn't matter what gender you are, it doesn't matter your financial status, doesn't matter what your occupation is. Back to the article. I know that you, the dedicated men and women of the FBI, are courageous warriors of justice. I will always have your backs because you have the backs of the American people. I look forward to serving with you in the years to come. 10 years, Lord willing. That's how long an appointment lasts. Now, is it possible that if, God forbid, a Democrat takes over as president in 2028, well, technically 2029, would they replace him before his 10 years term is over? Yeah, they would. Let's just call it what it is. They would. And if, God forbid, even worse, if a rhino were to be elected, then yes, they probably would replace him as well. The deep state, the uniparty swamp, the globalist elite cabal, they don't like Kash Patel. And there's a reason for that. That reason is because he's going to expose a lot of stuff. He's going to name a lot of names. He's going to hurt a lot of people, a lot of very bad people. And many of those very bad people are in our own government. Gretchen Whitmer forges business deal with Iran-linked Emirati Sheikh implicated in hacking schemes. Now, when I first read the story, saw the story, I was wondering why it wasn't getting picked up by more outlets. It has all of the hallmarks of a bombshell report that other conservative outlets would pick up on. It's focused on Gretchen Whitmer, arguably one of the top 3 least liked governors in the United States of America as far as conservatives and patriots are concerned. It has a potentially corrupt Emirati Sheikh. It's got Iran. It's got Michigan. What more do you need? And so I read through the story, and it wasn't until I got to about paragraph 4 or 5 that I realized exactly why they aren't talking about it. But let's start with the details from the story itself. This is over at Washington Free Beacon by Chuck Ross. So this Gretchen Whitmer goes over to the United Arab Emirates. She signs a deal with a leader. This leader, what's his name? Sheikh Saud bin Sakr al-Qasimi, who is the ruler of Ras Al Khaimah, which is one of the 7 United Arab Emirates, right? So she signs a deal with him. He's going to help with education at the University of Michigan, which right off the bat, that's alarm bells, right? We know at least what Saudi Arabia has done in the very recent past when it comes to infiltrating education and pushing their ideology upon the world. Is the same happening with the UAE? I don't know the answer to that, but, I figured, hey, somebody should probably look into that. Again, I thought this was a bombshell story, and it is. But as it turns out, this investment is more than just potential corruption between a sheik and an unpopular American governor. No, there's actually, this guy is potentially dangerous. As we skip down to I guess the 4th paragraph, Saud, a University of Michigan graduate who hosted the governors during her visit, is a controversial figure in the United States. The dictator, who was until recently represented by Deckert's Andrew Levander, threatened to sue the Washington Free Beacon for reporting on litigation that accused him of using a network of lawyers, lobbyists, private eyes, and hackers to wage smear campaigns against former business associates and journalists. Okay, that's pretty bad. What else? In 2013, Jay Solomon, then a reporter for the Wall Street Journal, reported that Saud and his allies sold a Georgian hotel as part of a money laundering scheme designed to help Iran evade U.S. sanctions. One of Solomon's sources was Iranian businessman Farhad Azima, then an ally of Saud. After the report was published, Georgian officials blocked the sale of the hotel, a steep financial setback for Saud. It also put Saud on the radar of American authorities for potential sanctions violations. Azima and Solomon have since sued Saud, accusing him of ordering a hack and leak operation against them, targeting critics of the emirate. They accuse Saud's law firm, Deckert, and an Iranian-American oil executive linked to the Atlantic Council and Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. And if you don't know, those are very globalist organizations. Amir Hanjani, of orchestrating the operation through Indian hackers. The Journal fired Solomon in 2017 after his emails were leaked online and to various news outlets. He has said his emails were distorted to suggest that he had an undisclosed business arrangement with Azima, claims he has strongly denied. So there you have it. Is conservative media avoiding this story because they're concerned that this guy's going to go after them? I mean, it's possible. That seems to be his modus operandi. He doesn't like what American journalists are reporting about him, especially if they get involved with his business deals, and all of a sudden, they're getting lawsuits, they're getting hacked, they're getting fired from their jobs. Not good. Not good. Not good at all. And just for the record, I do not have any suicidal thoughts. I have no business relationships with anyone really that could get me in any trouble. I'm an independent journalist, so if you do hear anything negative coming out of the United Arab Emirates anytime in the near future, it's because I'm reporting on this story. Matt Walsh delivered a brutal analysis of the Republican Party's pro-life movement after Roe v. Wade was overturned. Now, for those who've been watching my show for any amount of time, you probably know I'm not the biggest fan of the Daily Wire, just as I'm not the biggest fan of CPAC. I think both serve their roles. I don't think they're controlled opposition, but they're about as milquetoast conservative as it gets. They're more aligned with the Republican National Committee than with actual MAGA voters, America First voters. With that said, Matt Walsh is one of the exceptions, one of the few exceptions in both cases. He is honest, and I don't agree with everything that he says or does, but I agree and I appreciate, not agree with, but I appreciate just how brutally honest he's willing to be. He doesn't care who he upsets. I appreciate that because I don't care who I upset. So there's a little bit of kindred spirit action going there. With that said, his take on the pro-life movement within the Republican Party following the overturning of Roe v. Wade, I think it's spot on.
It's easy to forget that just even several months ago, certainly in the last couple of years, we were told, even by conservatives, that our victories, the great victory of repealing Roe v. Wade, one of the great human rights victories of all time, was actually a bad thing politically because we were going to pay for it. We were going to pay the price with some great backlash in the polls, and the women of America would rise up to punish us for protecting babies from slaughter. And that didn't happen. And the reason that it didn't happen is because it turns out, as many of us, as we have all been saying, people like you have been saying, the pro-life argument is a winning argument. It is a winning argument. And as long as you're just honest, the only way to win the argument and when you're pro-life is to be brutally honest and to show, it's one thing, if we are claiming that there is a genocide of children happening, that 60 million human beings have been slaughtered by abortion, if that's what we claim, which is what we claim because it's true, then there should be passion and even anger behind our words. And if there isn't, then why would anyone take us seriously? Because it's like we don't even believe what we're saying. So we are not the ones. The pro-abortion side, they're the ones who have to cover everything they say in euphemisms. They have to be very careful about every word they choose. And the euphemisms constantly change because they can't talk simply and clearly about what the thing is. And we win the argument simply by being clear about it, because the pro-life argument is, as I said, it's the most winning argument of all time. The pro-life argument is simply this, that it is always wrong to intentionally kill innocent human children. That's it. And I defy any pro-abortion person, any so-called pro-choice person, to engage with that. Are you saying that there are times when it is actually okay to intentionally kill an innocent human child? And that's what they don't want to engage with. And as long as we're honest about it, then we win the argument.
So this is one of the very few issues where I diverge from President Trump. To me, he is too weak on the abortion issue. But it's not something where I'm gonna be, oh no, now I can't support him. It's relatively minor, not the abortion issue, but the differences between our stances are minor enough to where, look, I'm happy with fighting this on the cultural level anyway, which is where the battle needs to be fought. We can fight it legally, and that is always going to happen from both sides. But we need to wake people up. We need to make them aware that, number one, a preborn baby is a baby. Okay? Period. To me, that babiness, that personhood begins at conception. Others may have a different view, but regardless, whenever that baby is officially a person, at what point is it okay? When is it okay to murder that preborn baby? That's the question that needs to be asked, and that's how the argument needs to be framed. Because once you frame it like that, it is practically impossible. I won't go so far as to agree with Matt Walsh that there is no possible argument. There are arguments that can be made. They're irrational, they're incorrect, but there are arguments that can be made. We can't go into this with our eyes shut and say, oh, well, if I just get them to say that it's a person, then they're checkmate. They can't have an argument for murdering a preborn baby, because they can, and they will. It'll be the wrong argument, but let's not assume that we're just going to win the debate by changing the framing. We still have to argue, and that argument needs to continue, because this, to me, as I've said before, this is a cultural battle. We have to not make it to where it's so illegal. I mean, I shouldn't say we should not. That shouldn't be our only path forward, is to try to make abortion illegal. That's important too. But we need to win this culturally. We need to change hearts and minds. We need to make people aware of what it is that they're promoting murdering. The person that is inside of these women, they need to understand that, number one, it's a person. Number two, it's innocent, and it is being murdered when abortions are committed. So if we can fight that, continue to fight that on a cultural level, then the political argument almost becomes moot. Serbian president slams USAID for inciting regime change, demands journalists say how much money his outlet has received. This comes from Liz Heflin over at Remix. We've got it cross-posted over at Infowars.com. But I'm going to cut to the important part, because, yes, he's speaking very kindly about President Trump, all that good stuff, noting to his audience, the audience of his people, that President Trump called them out by name. And this was apparently very embarrassing and enlightening to him. But let's get to this part. Vucic admitted during his TV interview that money has been received and used, but primarily for, quote, senseless projects that were supposed to cover their eyes, while the real intent of most funding was to overthrow the government. Asked about the many videos of himself and other officials thanking USAID for funding projects, Vucic said that when someone gives you €1,000, it is up to you to still politely say thank you. When he then indicated that the money was spent on equipping Serbian courts with various recording devices, microphones, and other things. Again, this is money that's coming from USAID that's supposed to be, humanitarian aid. Let's get the LGBTQIA plus opera going in wherever. No, that's not what the money is for. That's not what our tax dollars were wasted on. They were used for the sake of the Central Intelligence Agency and their puppet masters in the deep state to engage in statecraft, to engage in any form of control that they could initiate as a result of cash, because that's what USAID was for. It is the cash distribution wing of the deep state. That's what they were doing. In the last 4 years, back to the article. In the last 4 years, according to Vucic, there were 400 million dinar, of which not even 10 million went to the state. Everything went your way for the non-government sector. Oddly, in April of 2024, a few months before USAID's additional $18 million was announced, TRAG and CRTA jointly announced a USAID competition for grants under what they called a mobilization fund program. It's just the corruption of USAID is getting exposed across the board. It's not just Doge. Now that the word is getting out, we're starting to see more people, including world leaders, coming out and saying, yeah, so this is what they were doing. Keep in mind, it's not that people didn't know. It's not that these world leaders or regional leaders or town mayors or whatever across the globe, they knew that it was corruption. They could see it, firsthand. They could see it, hear about it secondhand. They knew exactly what was happening with the money, or at least they knew that it was being used for corrupt purposes. They knew that it was all disguised, but as far as they were concerned, this was all U.S. government sanctioned. It wasn't until Donald Trump. It wasn't until Elon Musk. It wasn't until Marco Rubio. It wasn't until the Trump administration came along and said, hey, this is bad and we don't approve. And then all of a sudden, like, oh, whoa, so that money you guys have been giving not just me, but also giving to my opponents, my adversaries, the press, this cartel, this bad actor. You mean you guys didn't really want that? That was some rogue element within your government? And it's like, yes, it's exactly what we're saying. It's like, oh, well, in that case, let me tell you a little something about USAID. Former CIA analyst Jim Rickards has built a reputation over the decades, really, of being able to read the writing on the wall and make determinations, make predictions. Some of them are going to be right around the corner. Others are going to be further down the road. But either way, he's usually right. It's very uncanny how good he is at this stuff, his latest analysis, which you can find for yourself at jdrucker.com/crisis, jdrucker.com/crisis. His latest analysis surrounds President Trump's tariffs. Now, they have been, in my humble opinion, wildly successful so far. They've been able to make certain things happen that I think a lot of people didn't think were possible. And of course, they have a dramatic potential revenue generating effect for the United States of America. But with that said, there are certain risks, certain challenges, and it's not just going to come from China or Canada or Mexico or Colombia or wherever. According to Rickards, he thinks that the biggest threat sits right in the heart of New York City. Crazy stuff. And he thinks that there are things that we need to do as American citizens to prepare, because things are already in motion. According to Rickards, this next major event, which will happen, according to his prediction, between now and April 11th, 2025, something that we should pay attention to. So go and check out his latest prediction, jdrucker.com/crisis. See if there's something there for you to gain from and to potentially prepare for, because the world is changing. For us, it seems as if it's changing very much for the better. but there are going to be certain challenges, certain risks. And I think being prepared for those challenges, being prepared for those risks, that's the difference between thriving or just making it by. Did President Trump just end the political career of Maine Governor Janet Mills? It's definitely possible. And to be clear, it wouldn't be him who's ending her career. It's the fact that she's going against the will of the people. But let's first take a look at the clip that everybody in legacy media and everybody even on social media, they're talking about today.
The NCAA has complied immediately, by the way. That's good. But I understand Maine. Is Maine here, the governor of Maine? Well, are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws.
Well, we are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state, good. I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one. And enjoy your life after governor because I don't think you'll be in elected politics.
Yeah, it just doesn't get any better than that. That is perfect. So let's be clear. Did Trump really just end the career of Janet Mills? No, he did not. Janet Mills may have just ended the career of Janet Mills, and not because she's fighting against Trump, because you got legacy media saying that she's like all this super awesome, whatever. No, that's not the reason. The reason is because she and the rest of her cohorts in the uniparty swamp, at least most of them, are still continuing to go against the will of the people. There are certain things, certain policies where it's like, oh, okay, so that's sort of like, that's sort of Democrat, sort of Republican. It's 51-49, 48-52, whatever. But then there are other topics, other policies that are unambiguously wanted by the American people. We're talking 60, 70, sometimes 80% of the people agree with a certain topic. And the uniparty swamp, people like Janet Mills, tend to go against that for whatever reason. They're going against the will of the people. They're going against history. Okay. For example, you've got Doge. Okay. Doge, let's call it what it is. Doge, you might disagree with how they're going about doing it, but nobody, and I'm talking, maybe just the bottom 20%, the idiots of this nation, other than those people, the vast majority of Americans agree that government corruption, fraud, and waste should be not only exposed, there should be transparency, but it should be ended. Okay, again, we can disagree about how it's being done, but nobody wants it to continue unless they're just absolute idiots. Number two, you've got the border crisis. Okay, and this is something that sort of surprised me a bit. I did not realize until just before the 2024 election just how unified the American people were against the border invasion. I thought, there'd been enough indoctrination about open borders and stuff like this, but I fell victim, and I think a lot of us fell victim to the propaganda being pushed by legacy media. As it turned out, and we saw this in part at the ballot box, but we also saw it in the exit polls, we saw it in the regular polling, and now we're continuing to see it today, that the vast majority of Americans agree there's a border invasion. They want it to stop, and they want criminal illegal aliens to be deported. It's straightforward. Okay, we can disagree about dreamers or whatever, but as far as getting rid of Tren de Aragua, yeah, nobody's like, oh no, we've got to keep those gangsters here in America. Well, I say nobody except for people like Janet Mills. And then number three, we have this. We have the idea that most Americans, vast majority, do not want men competing against women in sports. They do not want boys competing against girls in sports. They do not want men walking around naked in girls' locker rooms. That's what the people want. And I would suspect that it won't take long before President Trump and the White House do go after Janet Mills. They do go after Maine because, it's it's obvious that they're on the wrong side. They being Maine and Janet Mills and the government by allowing boys to continue to compete against girls. The White House is going. Hold on, we just got a new report. 1 second. Let's take it to let's take it to Peter Ducey.
And something else that we can update you on from the top of the hour. I've been given an early copy of a release from the Education Department. Earlier today, we saw President Trump and the Maine governor squaring off, saying they would see each other in court because Maine is defying President Trump's new executive order on boys in playing in girls' sports at the high school level. Well, I've just been given, there is a new Title IX civil rights investigation that the Trump administration is launching against Maine. So President Trump was not lying when he said he will be seeing the Maine governor and her team in court over this. It says it is specifically because Greeley High School, a school under its jurisdiction, is continuing to allow at least one male student to compete in girls' categories. Martha.
Well, what can I say? You know, there's one very challenging part about doing a show like this. There is the awesome part about being here during the Trump era, during the golden era of America. There's always going to be news. There's always going to be things for us to talk about, and it won't always be negative. You know, we went through 4 years of me being Eeyore. Oh, bother. Joe Biden did this again. Joe Biden fell. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. Oh, bother. Now it's like, yes. Yeah. That's my Elon Musk impersonation, by the way. Yeah. Anyway, but that's the good part. The bad part is that the Trump administration comes at you pretty fast. If you don't stop and pay attention, you're going to miss it. Warren Buffett's extreme moves that has sparked fears of stock market and 401k crash. And this is something obviously I've been talking about for a very long time. My concerns with the stock market during the Biden-Harris regime were for one reason. My concerns about the stock market under President Trump's administration are for different reasons, but the concern still remains. And apparently I'm not the only one. And Warren Buffett may know, it's unconfirmed, but he may know a thing or two more than I do about investing. This story comes to us from the Daily Mail. It says, genius investor Warren Buffett's continued hoarding of cash and selling of stocks continues to stoke fears of a potential market crash that could hammer 401ks. The cash and treasury bills being held at the Oracle of Omaha's famed company Berkshire Hathaway has risen above $300 billion in the third quarter. The Wall Street Journal reports that these holdings are a record for the Nebraska-based firm. For Berkshire Hathaway to be holding lots of cash is typical, but the recent scale in buildup has caused a stir among observers of the conglomerate. The company is preparing to hand over Buffett's annual letter to shareholders this week, which will hint at what he thinks the current state of the stock market is. The shareholders also should see how he plans to spend his hoards and will be privy to how much cash was held at the end of last year. Stephen Sheikh, the chief investment officer of Sheikh Capital Management, told the Wall Street Journal, the issue is, what are they going to do with all this cash? This is as extreme as I can recall, and we are dealing with extreme times. Okay, I know there's at least a bunch of you, some of you maybe, out there listening to me right now, who are like, you know what, Trump's in the office, everything's fine, stock market will be okay. But that's not the case. And to be clear, I'm not like a financial advisor or an economist or anything like that. I'm just a guy who reads what smart people like Warren Buffett are saying. And not just him. I read far more financial reports than one would expect from somebody of my financial stature, which is low. But with that said, I do have a good understanding of what's happening in the economy. And if I had hundreds of thousands, millions, billions of dollars to invest, I would not be putting that money into the stock market, not today. When it comes to, as they're talking about here, about 401ks and retirement accounts in general, yeah, there are definitely concerns. The vast majority of people have their retirement accounts locked into stock markets. And to be clear, look, I have partners, I have friends that I work with in multiple areas of retirement. I would be talking about this concern in this story if I didn't have those friends and partners. But since I do, it behooves me and it behooves them and it behooves you to know about them. One focuses on physical precious metals. Genesis Gold Group is a faith-driven company that helps people take their 401ks, IRAs, government retirement accounts, whatever, take the stock market-based accounts that they currently have and do a tax-free rollover or transfer into an IRA, a Genesis Gold IRA, backed by physical precious metals. They can do so very quickly, very inexpensively, very hassle-free. And you should call them at 800-200-4653, or you can always just go to jdrgold.com. That's jdrgold.com. But ever since, and that's something I've been doing for a long time, right? Recently, after President Trump was elected, I partnered with a crypto retirement company as well, and not just any crypto retirement company. I did my due diligence. I invested time, not money, but I invested time into looking into the best ones out there, and I came to the conclusion that Block Trust IRA is the way to go. Block Trust IRA allows you to not only have a buy and hold strategy with your retirement accounts through cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum. They also give you the option of having a managed account, which I think makes a whole lot of sense. A managed account that will attempt to grow your retirement accounts even faster than the speed of Bitcoin's rise or Ethereum's rise or whatever. You can check them out by going to jdrucker.com/crypto, jdrucker.com/crypto. With that said, let's see what else Mr. Buffett is recommending. Berkshire Hathaway generates money from its operating businesses, which include insurer Geico, battery maker Duracell, and restaurant chain Dairy Queen. I did not know they owned Dairy Queen. I did not know that. Just last week, Buffett also saw that the company offloaded billions of dollars in stock of DaVita, a dialysis provider. As Buffett continues to hoard cash and sell off large portions of stock, it could point to him fearing a potential crash in the market, spelling disaster for working Americans who have their 401ks tied to the success of the stock market. And let's face it, it's most of us. Most of our 401ks, even the old ones, a lot of people have like an old 401k from a previous job sitting around, just accumulating. I mean, even that alone, move it. Again, not a financial advisor, to be clear, but if it behooves you to look into companies like jdrgold.com or jdrucker.com/crypto, please do so. It's I think it makes a lot of sense. Even though Berkshire sold 203,091 shares, it still owns 45% of DaVita. The stake, valued at $6.4 billion, has been part of Berkshire's portfolio since 2011. Large sell is becoming repeat behavior, with Berkshire being a net seller of equity securities in the past 8 quarters. Again, we're seeing different challenges today, but the end result is the same. Different challenges under the Biden-Harris regime, different challenges under the Trump administration, but all of it's pointing to, we'll call it, both a traditionalized version of the economy as well as a modernized version. This is why, again, precious metals, crypto, precious metals, crypto. I don't make recommendations based upon, oh my gosh, these guys pay me the most. I pick out my sponsors and my partners based upon the fact that I wholeheartedly appreciate and recommend them. I went through so many gold companies looking for one that has integrity. That's why I went to Genesis Gold Group. Fun times. I'm not going to read the rest of this. You can always find this. This is over at thedailymail.co.uk. Buckle up, folks. We do have, I think, far better financial times ahead now that President Trump is behind the wheel, now that he's brought in these great people to work with the economy. But unfortunately, the president is not the sole defender of the economy, the sole promoter of advancing the economy. He can do everything that he can do, but there are still other factors, including the Federal Reserve, including foreign nations, including, unfortunately, even Congress. And I say unfortunately not because it's unfortunate, it's because Congress itself is unfortunate. Yes, I know we have Republican majorities in the House and the Senate, but here's the thing. the majorities of the Republicans in our Republican majority of them are rhinos. So it's not like we can expect some dramatic, ultra conservative fiscal policies. All I know is this: President Trump and Elon Musk and all of their merry friends within the Trump administration, they're doing everything they can to cut. We're seeing tariffs coming up. We're seeing, hopefully, Lord willing, very soon, income taxes going down. We're seeing positive things that are happening in the economy. But do not equate positive things happening in the economy with stock markets going to necessarily rise. To me, the safe haven of physical precious metals, the advancing potentials of cryptocurrency, that is where people should be looking today. Could the income tax, the IRS, and even the Federal Reserve be completely abolished here in the United States of America? And could it happen quickly? The answer is most definitely yes, because I think we're all learning, hopefully, at least all of my listeners and audience are very well aware that it seems that anything is possible. There was a time not too long ago when I would have said there were certain limits to both good and bad. I want to take you back real quick before we get into this story. I want to take you back to 2020, early 2020, just around the time when the pandemic was ramping up, before lockdowns, before any of that stuff. If you had asked me certain questions, I would have been wrong on all of them. And I take pride in not being wrong very often. But I definitely would have been wrong. If you had asked me, would the American people, especially conservatives, would they be willing to completely give up their freedoms, to stay in lockdown over a disease, regardless of the mortality rate? Would they allow themselves to lose all of their freedoms, essentially? To be told who was essential and who was not? Or would people rise up? And I learned during what was supposed to be a rally that there weren't a whole lot of us out there. Not nearly as many as I would have thought. I attended a rally. I was supposed to be, I didn't quite help organize it, but I was supposed to help promote it. We got the word out. We had RSVPs from thousands of people. Press came out to this rally. We were going to a city hall here in California, and we were going to make our voices heard regarding the lockdowns. And there were more press there than there were patriots. There were more people taking pictures and filming the embarrassment than there were actual people there, actual patriots, ready to fight back, ready to make our voices heard. And that was a shocker to me, because I had participated in such rallies in the past, similar rallies, Tea Party rallies, for example, and they were pretty easy to organize. But once government started cracking down and saying, oh, you're not essential, so you can't be out here. You have to only get one roll of toilet paper per day, and you have to wear a mask and stay 6 feet apart and get injected with an experimental mRNA vaccine because, hey, this disease seems to kill the occasional person. I would not have known it or believed that it was possible had I not seen it with my own eyes. I would not have believed that a disease such as COVID would have been able to prompt mass vaccination. I would not have believed that over 80% of the population would get at least one jab for a disease that posed very limited risk to anybody under the age of 50, almost no risk to children. And yet, it did prompt millions of kids to get injected by their parents and their doctors. I wouldn't have believed it, but I learned very quickly that the fortitude of the American people was not nearly what I thought it would be. Not in a situation like that. Not, especially considering the facts were very, very crystal clear to anybody who would look at them. There was no need for lockdowns. There was no need for face masks. There was no need for injections. And there definitely wasn't a need for social distancing. We've seen examples of other nations, Sweden, for example, that did not participate in the draconian activities that we did. Their end results were far better than ours. Go figure. But again, I would not have expected it. Not because of take the science out of the equation. And let's focus on the freedom. I know that when I was growing up, that it couldn't have happened. Could not have happened. Period. I mean, we weren't perfect by any means. We had our own set of problems. But there's no way that we would have been willing to. At those numbers, I should say. It's not saying nobody would have. But I would say that the injection rate would have been probably closer to 60 or 70%. I would say that there would have been much more defiance to the draconian rules. We've learned that in 2020, that something I thought was fairly impossible was very possible. And it wasn't the fact that the election was stolen that I knew was possible. It was the fact that despite mountains of evidence demonstrating widespread, ubiquitous voter fraud, a massive amount of voter fraud, that the truth could not penetrate the shield of lies that had been placed around it. I could not believe that. I witnessed it. I participated in it. I lost accounts over it. I still, to this day, am pretty sure that I am the first person to ever get banned on Spotify for expressing an opinion that was not illegal, an opinion that was not destructive. It was an opinion regarding the election. Now, granted, I was pretty vocal about it, but I got banned, and I even got a phone call from a phone call that I can't discuss, from somebody who said that they supported what I was doing and that it wasn't a unanimous decision to ban me from not only Spotify, but also Transistor and some other podcasting system. I would not have thought that they could have gotten away with it, but I was wrong. And as it turned out, I'm very glad that I was wrong, because in 2020, had we gotten our way, had my prayers and my actions, my prayers been answered, my actions have been heeded, my words had been heeded, had that been the case, then we would be in trouble. Right now, today, we'd be in big trouble. You know why? Because President Trump, had he been allowed to rightly win the election, then we would have maintained Mike Pence as the vice president. We would have still had Bill Barr as the attorney general. We would have still had people like Christopher Wray running the Federal Bureau of Investigations. We wouldn't have this amazing cabinet that we have today. Nor would President Trump have this massive mandate that he has today. As a matter of fact, today we would probably be faced with President Gavin Newsom or Gretchen Whitmer or somebody like that. It would have been disastrous. We did not get our way, praise God, that his will was done. President Trump's election victory in 2020 was stolen, and here we are today with this massive, wonderful situation that we're currently in. What about Roe v. Wade? I would have guessed very wrong. I would have said there's no way that Roe v. Wade gets overturned in my lifetime. I'm still alive, so we're still in my lifetime, and Roe v. Wade was overturned. Praise God for that one as well. Point being is that anything seems possible. Had you asked me a few years ago if it was possible to abolish the IRS, get rid of the income tax, I would have said no way. No, we'd have to. It'd take a 2-generation plan to make that happen. What about the Federal Reserve? I would say absolutely, positively not. It's a private corporation, can't be done. Nothing we can do. We're stuck with them forever. We can fight it, but they have more control over the government than the voters or even the government itself. That's what I would have said. We've learned over the last month that we can dream. We can set goals that previously many of us, most of us, maybe all of us, would have thought were unrealistic. Suddenly, they're realistic. I don't know how realistic it is that we can completely abolish the IRS, but I think that it's definitely possible, as well as the income tax. I mean, we know that we're already in the process of trying to reduce it. Can it be eliminated? Can tariffs make up the difference? According to the most recent statistics, based upon just the notion of President Trump with his desires for equal tariffs across the board. In other words, whatever they charge us, we charge them. If that is implemented appropriately, universally, collected right and all that good stuff, we're talking about, at least at this stage, about $700 billion in additional revenue for the federal government. But that doesn't take into account that if you were to also eliminate the income tax, you can't assume that prices could go up because of the tariffs, but so would spending. We would have more money. We could spend more, so there would be a need to import more, which means there would be more revenue generated as a result. It's funny, I'd never really considered tariffs to be a variation of like a consumption tax, but in many ways it is. The more we buy, the more tax in the form of tariffs are collected. That's a discussion for some of the day. What about the Federal Reserve? Is it truly immune? Does it truly own the citizens of the United States of America, as many of us have speculated over the years, over the decades? Maybe, maybe not. But again, we're talking about a new era. It's generally speaking, when candidates, especially presidential candidates, and even politicians, they don't have to be running for office. They can just come up with these grandiose ideas, these grand plans, and they always stick some crazy, cool, sort of awesome, but mostly cheesy name to it, such as the new golden era here in the United States of America. Well, it appears that such a dream is possible. As a matter of fact, I can't see it being stopped unless there's some sort of catastrophe. And of course, only if God wills for it to stop, or if he stops willing for it to continue, however you want to word it. Just imagine where we are compared to where many of us thought we were going to be. Even those of us, look, if you're going to sit out there and say, you know what, I knew that it was going to go down like this. I've been, I had this guy tell me, look, I've been following Trump since the escalator. I knew that it was going to be like this. And I asked him, I said, so then why wasn't it like this in the first term? Why was it so? And let's be transparent. Let's not be revisionist with our history, especially compared to what we're seeing today. The first term of President Trump was not fantastic. Was it better than Joe Biden? Was it better than Barack Obama? Was it better than George W. Bush or Bill Clinton or George H.W. Bush? Well, yeah, but talk about a low bar to set. Sure, it was better. We got tax cuts, but we still didn't repeal Obamacare. We didn't finish building the wall. We didn't do a lot of things. Don't get me wrong, there was some great stuff that happened during President Trump's first term. But there was a lot of bad stuff that happened as well. So if this person who's been following and rooting for President Trump since coming down the escalator, I ask, why did all of these great things that are happening today, why weren't they done that first term? And the answer, of course, is that we have a better President Trump today. And I would argue that better President Trump is clearly more redefined, better mandated, and perhaps more under the full will of God. Because it's clear, to me at least, that President Trump is here for a reason. I think, as of today, it appears that reason is good, which is why, to me, there is no reason for us to not dream about, hope for, and even work towards getting rid of the IRS, getting rid of the Federal Reserve. There's a reason why the income tax and the Federal Reserve came about 112 years ago, almost at the exact same time. That reason is because they are intertwined. The income tax is not to pay for government action. That's not true. We always, my taxpayer dollars are paying that. My taxpayer dollars are paying that. That is inaccurate. That is not true. The Federal Reserve and the money that we borrow as a nation from the Federal Reserve pays for everything. All our tax dollars do is pay to service the debt to the Federal Reserve. That's it. Technically speaking, if we follow the money along the entire path, our taxpayer dollars pay interest, pay to service the debt. The debt that we continue to accumulate is what pays for stuff. This was designed to grow. It was designed to become too massive for us to be able to service it at some point. In other words, it was designed to be finite. It was designed to fail. And we are so close to that failure being realized, which is why when I say, hey, let's dream because, let's dream of getting rid of the IRS and the Federal Reserve and a whole bunch of other stuff, because it seems like we're in a good time for dreaming with President Trump out there and Elon Musk and all the other guys doing their thing, right? That's not the only reason. The only reason is because we don't really have a choice. We don't. The other option, the foul, devious option, the option that I would have said was almost a certainty just 2 or 3 months ago, I would have said we would have eventually be falling under the disgusting and cataclysmic scenario of fully embracing, because we've already partially embraced it, fully embracing modern monetary theory. That is the direction that we have been heading for a very long time. And it wasn't until President Trump came into office and started giving us hope. Now, I want to be very clear. Nothing that President Trump or Elon Musk or Tom Homan or Marco Rubio or Pam Bondi or Kristi Noem or any of them, nothing that they do can succeed unless it is the will of God for it to succeed. But conversely, nothing they do will fail if it is the will of God for it to not fail, which is why I say always, best thing we can do is to pray. Pray for our nation. Pray for clarity and discernment for our leaders. Pray that those who want to do us harm, whether us as a nation, us as individuals, us as a people, pray that their plans, their machinations, their actions are thwarted. We must continue to pray. And a lot of people, especially obviously if you're not a Bible-believing Christian, you see no benefit in that. But if you are a Bible-believing Christian, I would ask you to please put all of us as a nation in your prayers every day. Every prayer should include a mention of protection and discernment and wisdom for President Trump. Same thing for Elon Musk. Let them do God's will, not our will, not even their will. Have them pray. Pray that they will do God's will, because only then can this nation fully be saved. Now, I know a lot of you out there are already, you're fuming. You don't want to hear these words. You don't want to hear anything that I'm saying, which I'm surprised that you're still listening if you fall into that category. But know this, know and understand this, that we are in a time, a very unique time in American history. And when I say unique, I'm not using that word as in, there hasn't been much like it. I'm using it in the textbook definition of the word. By very unique, I mean it has never happened and likely will never happen again, where we as a nation have an opportunity without catastrophe to be fundamentally changed. We've seen the nation changed during catastrophe, obviously, during the Civil War, for example. We saw the nation change. Following 9/11, we saw the nation change. Following COVID, or during COVID, we saw the nation change fundamentally. But now we don't need a catastrophe or an event of any sort for fundamental change to happen, because the catalysts are already there. The people are in place. The confirmation yesterday of Kash Patel finalized, in my books, finalized the key pieces. There are other pieces. There are plenty of confirmations to go. But Kash Patel was the one that I thought, if we can just get him and Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. and Pete Hegseth and all the other controversial picks, if we could get them in, we should be okay. And we're doing better than okay. We have opportunities. Things are looking good. So we have to keep that going. That was a very long introduction to an article that this is one of Michael Snyder's, I would say, most important articles. Not necessarily his most astounding. He does write some pretty crazy things. Nor is it even his most intellectual. These are things that are relatively straightforward, but he words it in a way that is necessary. He alerts us, because we don't need to be taught this, we need to be reminded of the fact that this is the time when those big changes can be made. The article's titled, The Answer to 1913 is 2025. 3 charts that show why the income tax, the IRS, and the Federal Reserve should all be abolished. Apologies for that. What a horrible time for my phone to not be muted. It's funny, it wasn't muted in a previous segment, and I was in the middle of reading at the time. And so I couldn't get it turned down, and then, of course, my phone goes again. Apologies, very unprofessional. Why the income tax, the IRS, and the Federal Reserve should all be abolished. Most Americans don't know that for much of U.S. history, there was no federal income tax, and there was no central bank. But now everyone assumes that we must have a federal income tax and a central bank in order to have a functioning society. Today, there are just a handful of nations that do not have an income tax, and more than 99% of the entire population of the globe lives in a country that has a central bank. Of course, the two work hand in hand. A central bank creates a spiral of borrowing that is meant to be unbreakable, and an income tax is necessary to service payments on the debt spiral. It is not a coincidence that a federal income tax and the Federal Reserve were both established in 1913. Since that time, we have piled up the biggest mountain of debt in the history of the world, and that is precisely the outcome that the system was designed to produce. I'm going to link to this article in the show notes. I encourage you to read it. It does tell us, I would say, quite a bit about what our future could hold. But I return to the notion, the idea, the fact that we shouldn't limit our hopes and dreams for the nation. Not anymore. If it took you a day, a week, a month to come to that conclusion, ever since President Trump was inaugurated, so be it. But I would say that at this point, 99% of America-loving patriots who listen to the sound of my voice, 99% of you, should realize that impossible things have already taken place in recent years, and especially over the last month. Impossible things. Things that hadn't been done before, unprecedented, unique. And understanding that, it is our, I think, responsibility to dream big, to strive for even greater things, to support those who will help us to achieve those greater things. And above all else, to pray to God that it is His will that we can make these things happen. Because if we can, if there's ever a time in American history where we can abolish the Fed, abolish income tax, start generating our revenue through tariffs and other means, if there was ever a time, it is now. We haven't seen a time like this over the last 112 years. We may never see a time like this in the next 112 years. But today, in 2025, we have that opportunity, which means that we have that responsibility to do everything we can to make it happen. Last year, my long-term storage food company, Prepper Farms, was partnered with and actually owned by another corporation. I know that nobody knew this. Very few people were even aware that this was the case because our production, our systems, everything was in place and working just as it should be. People would go, They would put in promo code JDR at prepperfarms.com. They would receive the maximum possible discount, as always, and then they would get their long-term storage beef. Things what you didn't know and what we can now explain now is that this year in 2025 we have gone back to the original ownership structure, and I'm very excited about that because that puts me finally back more in charge, and I am super excited about that concept, not because I crave power by any means, but because I feel that as an America First veteran-owned company that we need to focus on helping Americans to prepare for whatever is to come, whether it's natural disasters or emergencies or de-dollarization, food crises, bird flu, whatever it is. We do expect something to happen, which is why we built prepperfarms.com in the first place. The idea here is to get high quality, all American, all Texas beef, the good stuff, ribeye, New York strip, tenderloin, all of that good stuff, and freeze dry it naturally to give it a 25-year shelf life. We don't add any preservatives. There's only one ingredient, and that's beef. Lasts 25 years in the bag, and that's awesome. So support this show, support me, support yourself and your family. Protect yourself for the future by stocking up on long-term storage, high-quality beef. Go to prepperfarms.com. That's prepperfarms.com. Use promo code JDR, and you will receive the maximum possible discount. President Trump recommends paper ballots and other major voter reforms to the states. Pop quiz. How did President Trump win the 2024 election? Considering that the 2020 election was stolen and considering that they were going to try harder to defeat him in 2024, they were going to work for even more voter fraud than they were able to accomplish the first time. Why did he win? And the answer to that question is they gave up. They abandoned ship. There was no need to stick their necks out and risk getting caught if they were not going to be able to overcome the margin. In other words, what he was saying long before the election and what he attributed to his victory after the election, he and MAGA were able to accomplish too big to fail. Which means that chances are, as close as the election allegedly was, which it wasn't very close at all, but we know that there was at least some shenanigans. There were people that were engaged in voter fraud that was happening long before the election, long before the Democrats knew with a certainty that they were going to lose. Long before that, there was already mail-in ballot fraud. There was already plenty of voter fraud that was initiated before they gave up. Once election night came along and once they started seeing those early results and once they realized, hey, there's no reason for us to engage at all in this because we're going to lose, why stick our necks out? That's why President Trump was able to win every single swing state. He won all of the states he was supposed to win, plus every single swing state. Kamala Harris was an abysmal failure, and I would argue that she didn't even come as close as she allegedly did. This is why, and to be clear, for anybody who thinks, oh, I'm not sure if there was massive widespread voter fraud in 2020, compare the numbers, okay? Compare the numbers that Joe Biden got compared to the numbers that Kamala Harris got. Compare the numbers that Joe Biden got after the fact, coincidentally in all the swing states, to the numbers that Kamala Harris didn't get after the fact because they knew that they couldn't overcome President Trump's margin of victory. The reason I'm bringing all this up, because you all already know that, the reason I bring this up is that it's important to understand that nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. We're still faced with the same types, the same forms of voter fraud that are going to plague the 2026 election. They're also going to plague the 2028 election. Why? Because if we don't get it fixed before the 2026 election, we're not going to be able to get it fixed legislatively before the 2028 election because they're going to steal the 2026 election. They're going to take control of the House or the Senate or both, they being the Democrats. So we have 2 years to get the reforms in place, and it's a tricky situation because the reforms have to be initiated by the states. This is why it's the responsibility of state legislators and governors, and of course the people, us, those of us who live in the states, to demand that our state legislators and our state governors do what we want them to do when it comes to voter integrity. President Trump, speaking to a group of governors earlier today, reiterated many of the things we want to change, and he's specifically focused on paper ballots, noting that the cost of going to high-quality, high-tech, watermarked, not reproducible paper ballots would be about 8% of what they're paying right now for the very vulnerable, very cheatable digital versions of ballots that they're using today.
One other thing, I just before we leave, I think you should do this. For my safety and security and for the good of our nation, you should do it anyway, regardless, even if it costs 10 times more, but it actually costs you just a tiny fraction. If you went to paper ballots and you're voting, and I would hope that every Republican would, so it costs exactly 8% of what the machines cost. These machines, they got something going. They get business. It's amazing. So paper ballots, and paper is very sophisticated today. Paper, it's called watermark. It's impossible to copy, impossible to cheat. It's actually hard to believe that a piece of paper is highly sophisticated, but it's watermark, and it's it's amazing actually when you see it. You can't cheat. But if you went to paper ballots and same-day voting, and if you went to voter ID, and also one other thing, you want a proof of citizenship, those four things: proof of citizenship, voter ID, paper ballots, one-day voting. And if you went to two-day voting or three-day voting, but some of these states, you had 64 days. You know, California just finished up just a short while ago. They were voting a week and a half ago. They're trying to finish them up. And other states, too. They were weeks after the election. I mean, if that were a close election, you'd have to wait for weeks and weeks and weeks. You got finished fast, Brian. Thank you for your help. We did very well in Georgia. That was very nice. But some of these states, if you had a close election, you wouldn't know who won. And then, you know, once that happens, then you really never know who won. But you would save tens of millions of dollars. Forgetting about right, wrong, and security, safety, our country, our Constitution, and all of this. Number one, you'd have a much safer election. Number two, everybody, you'd know the results of your election by 10 o'clock. Everybody, it's a beautiful system. It's boxes of 5,000, boom, boom. And you can go and examine each box. It's so simple and so good. I did ask Elon, because he knows more about computers than anybody I know. I said, what do you think of the voting system? He said, computers are not meant for voting. It's just not it's too many transactions taking place too quickly. It's just not, he said, honestly, and I've gone to the best people, the smartest computer minds from MIT, from others. My uncle was a professor for 41 years at MIT, and a brilliant guy, and I got to know a lot of the people up there. And they will tell you that the most secure way that you can secure the election, and probably the fastest way, because there can be very little hanky-panky, is paper ballots. Can you believe it? So I hope, Sarah, that certainly the Republican governors, but if you want to save a lot of money, you go to paper ballots. It'll cost you 8% of what the costs are now. And that's based on a good deal for machines. And then when you go through the days and weeks and months of waiting, France had mail-in ballots. Anytime you have mail-in ballots, you're going to have fraud, without question. And France had it, and they went back to paper ballots. And I saw their election, and their election was over at 9 o'clock, and their numbers came in at 10:05. And there were no complaints. They had a winner, they had a loser, 39 million votes, and it was done. We're one of the only people that has now mail-in voting, one of the only countries that has mail-in voting.
All right, that's it. I mean, what else needs to be said? Well, of course, more needs to be said. Senator Mike Lee from the state of Utah took to X to lay out exactly what President Trump said, except in a much shorter version. He says paper ballots, same-day voting, photo IDs, proof of citizenship to register. Who's on board with this? And then Elon Musk, quote, posted the Mike Lee's post saying 100%. And yeah, I mean, there you go. Okay. Voting would be more accurate. Okay. It would be easier for the voters themselves. You might say, "Well, what about isn't mail-in ballots easier?" Well, not necessarily. Okay, I mean, sure. Does it save you a potential trip? Sure. Are you sure that your vote went in, got counted, didn't get dumped in some woods somewhere, as we've seen on multiple occasions over the past few elections? No, you have no idea. You have no idea. Okay, so is it? I mean, it's one of those things where sure you can buy the gas station sushi if you want because it's more convenient, but do you really want to eat gas station sushi when you can just go the few blocks more and get actual sushi from an actual sushi restaurant, a Japanese restaurant? Of course you don't want to get gas station sushi. And that's what mail-in balloting is to me. Now, there are going to be times, I'm not saying eliminate mail-in balloting altogether. There are going to be people who need exceptions. Members of the military serving abroad, people who are just incapable, unable, physically unable to get to the ballot box. Great, we have to, I mean, we need mail-in balloting for certain people, but not ubiquitous, not across the board. That's ludicrous, and that's a recipe for disaster. What about photo ID? Duh. You know, I'd mentioned earlier, in an earlier segment, I was talking about the various things that the vast majority of Americans agree with, you know, issues. And it seems that they agree with us, conservatives, you know, just common sense people, not even conservatives, just make sense, right? They want corruption ended. They want the border secure and the criminal illegal aliens deported. And yes, of course, they want men to be not competing in women's sports. But this is another one. Voter ID, photo ID presented, makes sense. You have to present your ID to do just about anything. Why would you not need your ID for voting? And the idea that it's somehow going to suppress the vote of minorities, particularly African Americans, that's the most racist concept I've ever heard of. Seriously. I mean, we hear a lot of racist things from Democrats on a regular basis, but that one, to me, is the most blatantly racist. When you have these people like Stacey Abrams, who, you know, that's her big thing. It's like, oh my gosh, voter ID will suppress the vote. Yes, but there was the most voters, you know, more voters voted against you than literally any other candidate in history. Are you sure that the vote got suppressed? It's like, yes, there would have been more and I would have won or whatever. I don't even know what that criminal talks about half the time. But so many of them have come out and said it's racist to have voter ID because you know, black people don't have IDs. And then I forgot who it was. Some journalist went to the streets and just started asking literally as many people as he could, hey, do you have an ID? Yes. Or do you know anybody, you know, speaking to black people, do you know anybody who doesn't have an ID? They're like, no, everybody's got an ID. You know, yeah, exactly. Do you know where the you know, polling place is? Yes, of course. Can you get there? Yes. Okay. I mean, anecdotally, we can understand how racist that is to say that, oh, black people will be suppressed if you make them put out their voter ID or their ID in order to vote. It's just the dumbest thing. And then, of course, proof of citizenship. That is the most no-brainer thing I've ever heard of. And just the sheer fact that the uniparty swamp Democrats in particular are still pushing for the idea that anybody can vote. They don't have to be U.S. citizens. Just blows my mind, the stupidity. But then you have to think about it and you realize, well, when you look at their policies and you look at the sentiment of the American people, the only way that they could possibly retain power at all is to cheat. So when they push for digital, you know, machine balloting and you know, multi-week voting windows and no voter IDs and no proof of citizenship, you realize, oh, it's not that they're trying to be fair. It's that they have no other possible way of winning. RFK Jr. drops his first official HHS video and promises to address the existential threat of chronic disease here in the United States of America. And amen for that. It's something that we've desperately needed for a very long time. And I'm hopeful, very hopeful, that he will be able to not only bring his perspectives to this all-important agency, but perhaps more importantly, be able to exude and I don't know, teach these people within the industry as well as, or within the agency as well as people in the industry itself, doctors, nurses, pharmaceutical people even. I know that sounds crazy, but I'm hopeful that he can get the mindset to change. And it has been changing. Even before him, even before President Trump, the mindset, I think, within the industry has been ever so slightly changing. We're seeing more and more doctors who are actually trying to treat the root causes of chronic diseases instead of just treating the symptoms, which we've been doing for basically the past 100 years, ever since the whole Rockefeller oil, big pharma thing. Don't even get me started. We can discuss that at another time. But with that said, this push to address the chronic illness plague is really what it is here in the United States of America. That is refreshing, and I'm very hopeful that he will be able to accomplish his goals and our goals for him. He dropped this video, and let's go ahead and play it. A little cheesy, but he gets a pass in my book because as long as he can get the job done, he can be as cheesy as he wants to be.
Hi, I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on my first day at work here at HHS. I want to take this moment to say a few words both to my supporters in the Make America Healthy Again movement, but also to all of the American public. I could read you a list of statistics proving that Americans suffer far higher levels of chronic disease, obesity, addiction, cancer, infertility, and depression than ever before in history and more than any other country in the world. You already know that. It's pretty obvious that something has gone terribly wrong with our health. I'm also not going to tell you the reasons for this decline. Why? Because neither I nor anyone else can be certain. But what I will tell you is that we're going to find out and we're going to do something about it. My commitment to you is that we're going to make chronic disease our top priority. In our first 100 days, we're going to examine every possible contributing factor to the epidemic of chronic disease. We will leave no stone unturned. We're going to listen to the experts and to the dissidents. We're going to listen to insiders and to the whistleblowers. We're going to listen to the doctors and we're going to listen to the moms. We will examine our food, our medicine, our water, our lifestyles, and our environment, everything that goes into Americans' bodies. I promise you that I will enter this inquiry with an open mind and a willingness to be wrong. And I ask that you join me in that. That's how we're going to build unity in this age of political division. We have to find something we care about more than being right, more than political advantage, and more than financial profit. The health of our children is a higher calling for all of us. And here's another promise. We're going to usher in a new era of transparency in all of our health agencies. There's going to be no more hidden conflicts of interest, no more secrecy, no more profiteering from the substances that we're supposed to be regulating. We're going to earn the public's trust with honest, unbiased science. After we get clear on the causes of chronic disease, we're going to take action to reverse it. I know that many of you have lost hope. I know that many of you take these chronic conditions as a normal part of life. Oh, it doesn't have to be that way. I know that because it wasn't that way when I was a kid, and it doesn't have to be that way tomorrow. All it takes is to unify our will to get serious about solving this problem. President Trump has made it one of his top priorities, and I promise to do everything in my power to carry it through. And all I need is your help.
Produced by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
The United States of America desperately needs RFK Jr. to be successful. Perhaps as much, if not more so than Doge, as much, if not more so than Tom Homan. We need RFK Jr. to truly change the paradigm. I mean, to shift our collective mindset as it pertains to healthcare here in the United States. We need to become healthier as a nation. Because this, I mean, have you ever seen, if you've seen the movie Wall-E, okay, that's the direction that we're heading. We're heading towards a world where robots are meeting all of our needs and we're sitting in flying lounge chairs, sipping on different things and getting fat and becoming incapable of survival without assistance, where the United States is becoming the largest assisted living facility that the world has ever known. And so that desperately has to change. I am rooting for RFK Jr., praying for his success, and very hopeful that the United States of America can finally go back to what we used to be way back when his dad and his uncle were doing things. America was actually, I know this is crazy, hard to believe, but Americans were generally healthy. The infrastructure here in the United States of America is, how should we put it, challenged. It's old. I mean, it was probably good decades ago, but now it is showing signs of age. And as a result, many Americans would be in a great deal of trouble if there was bad weather or natural disaster or some sort of, God forbid, some sort of attack that would take out the power grid for an extended period of time. Unfortunately, the vast majority of Americans do not have any real backup. I mean, we'd be sitting there waiting for FEMA or the electric company or somebody to turn the power back on. I am a huge fan of solar. The challenge with solar, of course, is that it can get very expensive, usually thousands, sometimes even tens of thousands of dollars to get a good solar generator and system. I have found a good one that is inexpensive, and I mean relatively inexpensive. It's still hundreds of dollars, but at least it's not thousands or tens of thousands. And it's the one that I use. In anytime there's challenges. It's also portable, so even when we go out, throw it in the trunk or the back of the SUV and go camping, go do whatever. It's always good to have a nice portable solar generator with you at the time. For me, I am a huge fan of the Grid Doctor. Go to jdrucker.com/solar. jdrucker.com/solar. And check it out. I think we're on sale right now. Well, I don't want to say right now because it depends on when you're watching this, but at least as of right this very second, there is a nice sale there. So go to jdrucker.com/solar and get you a Grid Doctor 300 today. Federal judge allows President Trump to dismantle USAID. Now, this is very big news and is not getting nearly the coverage that it should, particularly from legacy media. Now, I think we know the reason for that. Legacy media is apoplectic about the loss of USAID, perhaps more than any of the other cuts that DOJ has suggested that the Trump administration has initiated, because USAID serves in many ways amongst the many recipients of USAID's largesse regarding U.S. taxpayer dollars. Corporate media, legacy media across the globe has been a prime recipient of that money. Now, I'm going to read this portion of this article from 100% Fed Up, but I want you to stay with me because there's an important note after the said reading. This comes from M. Winger over there at 100%fedup.com. In a move that's dismantling the left's gravy train, a federal judge has given the Trump administration the green light to fire away. This is in regards to the USAID. And I don't think it will stop with firing. That place needs to be dismantled. This decision comes despite multiple lawsuits and upset liberals crying foul. They've worked hard to come up with that grift and funnel money through it. Too bad for them. NBC report says a federal judge Friday paved the way for the Trump administration to move forward with plans to remove thousands of U.S. Agency for International Development workers from their jobs. U.S. District Court Judge Carl Nichols denied a request from labor groups to issue a preliminary injunction after the Trump administration said thousands of USAID employees would be placed on administrative leave and ordered agency personnel abroad to return to the U.S. within 30 days. Now, the point I wanted to make, so cutting the waste, cutting the fraud, cutting the money laundering and this, that, or the other, that's great. That's important work, okay? And that's being done across multiple agencies, multiple departments in the federal government, thanks to Elon Musk, DOJ, and the Trump administration. But this one in particular is extraordinarily important, not just because we're exposing waste and fraud and corruption and outright theft in many cases of U.S. taxpayer dollars. More importantly, at least as far as I'm concerned, is that this is dismantling one of the most important tools being used by the U.S. deep state. The CIA's wing of, I guess you could say, money distribution is USAID. That's why their budget is actually bigger than the CIA's. But they don't use this for quote unquote humanitarian aid. They don't use this for helping people. The idea here is that if the CIA needs assets abroad, or even here in the United States, God forbid, but mostly abroad, what they do, they don't just say, okay, so we need to go to Congress and get money for a black ops site or for a black site in general. No. They say, okay, so we need to set up a base of operations in this African village. So instead of getting money for the CIA, we actually call on our puppets, really, at USAID to set up some charitable humanitarian whatever. Okay, it'll cost probably $5,000 to build. We'll funnel $150,000, and that'll allow us to build what we need to build. It'll allow us to pay off the local politicians and leaders and journalists and whoever so that they won't expose what we're doing. That is what USAID is really intended to do. It wasn't always intended to do that. I think that it was actually built. It was launched with good intentions in mind by John F. Kennedy, by the way. I think that he really thought that this was going to be a way for the United States to be able to give back basically to the world, to spread not just democracy, but to spread our values, to endear the world to us. But the CIA saw it as a, holy cow, you're telling me, well, hold on, let me make sure I got this right. You're telling me that here's an organization with a humongous budget, with very limited oversight, and all we've got to do is to make up some bogus reason for money to be distributed to wherever we want it to be distributed to, make up, pay off this dude's cousin to whatever, launch a clinic somewhere that's not really going to do much. We'll put a doctor there and maybe a nurse, and that's it. And then the rest of the money we'll use to do our bidding, to do the deep state's bidding. That's why getting rid of USAID is so important. It's not just about stopping waste or putting an end to the gravy train. It's about doing actual harm to one of the most destructive organizations in the world, and that is the U.S. deep state. Did President Trump just call out chemtrails as a possible reason for the rise in autism in the United States of America? I don't know. I think he might have. It's funny. The way he did it, the way he said it is sort of nonchalantly, as he is wont to do. Did he just reveal something, some knowledge that he has that maybe we didn't know he had? You tell me.
But, we have one stat that I quote, the autism stat, and you hear different numbers, but it's thousands. They say between 10 and 20,000. So if you go back 15 years ago, we had like nobody. It was 1 in 20,000. Now we have 1 in 34. Is that right? 34. So 34 or 36 kids have autism. And if you go back, I guess 18 years, that whenever that was done, it was 1 in 20,000. So we got from 20,000 to 34, 36. That's unbelievable. So there's something wrong. There's something wrong. We've done something wrong. There's something, you're going to figure it out. Maybe it's a spray that we spray all over the place that nobody else does. Other countries don't. The Pennsylvania Dutch, they don't do anything, and they're amazingly healthy. And
I don't know. That to me, that sounded an awful lot like a minor slip. Okay, it's not like he was just pulling something out of the air. No pun intended. He was saying that perhaps we're spraying something that other nations aren't. Now, that's not something that President Trump would just say unless he knows that we're literally spraying something that other nations aren't. This to me sounded like not so much of as an admission, but just a hint about what the reality is. He says that it could be causing autism. There have been many of us who have speculated about the reasons for chemtrails, anything from geoengineering to vaccination to trying to dumb us down to putting in chemicals that will make us more influenceable, more susceptible to persuasion. People talking about how it helps to push 5G. There's a lot of theories, and I don't want to downplay any of them because I don't know what it is. And anybody who does know what chemtrails are, or what, I think that there's multiple reasons I can say that. But anybody who does know the truth about it, they're either not talking or they've been government canceled, if you know what I mean. And so I don't know. I don't know what he's getting at there. But it does certainly sound like he knows something. But not the whole story. I don't think he would be asking the question about it so much as if he did know what the answer was. There are things, I think a lot of times people assume that the President of the United States has access to everything. And that is in some ways true, but in other ways it's not. There are things that the President just absolutely positively does not have access to. Information through the quote-unquote shadow government, the globalist elite cabal, the powers and principalities that they might tell some presidents. I think Barack Obama was probably given information that other presidents weren't because they could trust him because he's a globalist. Whereas somebody like President Trump, they wouldn't tell. Somebody like Joe Biden, even if they did tell him, he wouldn't have remembered it anyway. Did George W. Bush know it all? Probably. So who knows? Did Bill Clinton know it all? I would say probably not. I don't think they trusted Bill. But they definitely trusted George Bush. They definitely trusted Dick Cheney. They definitely trusted Barack Obama. And they definitely do not trust Donald Trump. So he's given parts of the information. And then there's also the fact that there is just so much classified information out there that a lot of it just gets missed. I mean, there are things that are hidden in plain sight, so to speak, at least as plain of sight as you can get when it comes to top secret information. So I don't know. I don't know if maybe it was just a slip. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe he's just speculating. Maybe he knows something. But either way, this is going to raise alarm bells, as it should. And it's going to get people like me talking about it, as we should. All right, that's it for today's episode of the JD Rucker Show. Please be sure to follow me on all the social media sites, as well as all the video places and podcast places where we host this show. You can find all of my websites, my Substacks, everything that I've got going by going to jdrucker.com/find. If you are watching on any of the various channels, just know that my primary venue through which I publish my show is my Rumble channel, which you can get to at jdrucker.com/rumble, jdrucker.com/rumble. Be sure to support our wonderful, amazing sponsors. We do a lot of work trying to find and vet out these sponsors. We don't just take anybody who's got some money. Okay, we want to make sure that these are high quality companies, America First companies that you can be proud of working with, and most importantly, companies that offer you great products, great services, great everything. So check them out. You can find those as well over at jdrucker.com/find. Be sure to watch the show. If you're new, subscribe. If you are still watching, please give us that all-important thumbs up or like or whatever. You know, these help with the algorithm. And if you appreciate what we do, then show that appreciation by giving us those thumbs up and those subscribes and all of that good stuff. We air Monday through Friday at the very least, oftentimes on weekends at 9 p.m. Pacific, which is, I know, midnight Eastern. That's late or early, depending upon how you want to look at it. Lord willing, I will be back very soon with another episode. But in the meantime, you all stay strong, stay safe, and God bless.